Much ado about #MeToo. Many interpretations of Shakespeare's text exist in productions composed of varying belief systems amongst its directors and actors. More specifically, the role of women in the bard's works garners more attention as perspectives formulate based on biased histories and political, spiritual, and cultural worldviews. Shakespeare infers a scriptural verisimilitude in Much Ado About Nothing. Quote, "A capable wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life." End quote. Furthermore, Kenny Leon's 2019 production of the play displays the role of femininity shifting from merely truth revealers, as in Shakespeare's time, to that of challengers of social inequities in the era of the #MeToo and Time's Up movements. In the exegesis of this recent historical performance, the data highlights the portrayal of women as spirit-filled leaders who seek to transform culture, fostering a more equitable and loving world in the 21st century. As Leon describes the directorial vision of his production, he espouses a message in which female roles shepherd their communities, striving for a better tomorrow for all people. Leon professes, quote, I'm reminded that we are fighting for values in America now more than anything. Much Ado is about protecting those values of love, family, respect, all those things that we say we believe in," end quote. Although Shakespeare's text begins with the men arriving home from war, Leon specifies the precise battle the United States, especially Georgia, fights among themselves. Journalist Tim Tiemann mentions the significance of the play's setting. Quote, "Emblazoned with a banner, Stacey Abrams 2020, which makes the play's location, political affiliations, and desires for a dream entrant to the 2020 election pretty clear." With the backdrop of a female politician's presidential campaign, albeit fictitious, the surrounding world of Georgia reflects hope and possibilities for a future of our nation led by a woman. Abrams, an added yet invisible character, signifies a powerful feminine voice in the play, reverberating her message for social justice, equal representation, and most importantly, taking action to reclaim the values currently under attack. On stage, the female actors inevitably reflect their views on femininity showcased in their personal and characters' journeys. Danielle Brooks, who plays Beatrice, describes the impact of Leon casting her in this famous lead role beloved by actresses and audiences alike. Although already attached to a Hollywood film with a supporting role, she decided on the Shakespeare play instead. Brooks admits, "I was doing it for little Danny, playing minor roles at Juilliard like Soldier to the Left and Witch Number 1. I always knew I had the chops, but I was never given the opportunity." As a plus-sized woman of color, Brooks breaks barriers for actresses who feel underrepresented, providing an additional voice to the extensive female perspective. She commands the stage in Beatrice's leading role, enabling society to reassess the image of femininity in an industry mainly depicting thinner or lighter-skinned women as the heroine archetype. Similarly, Margaret Odette, who plays Hero, conveys the importance of representation and accessibility, which affects the production's audience demographics. With the production part of the New York Shakespeare in the Park Festival, Odette shares the magnitude of an admission-free, all-Black cast. She asserts, "It invites people who don't yet feel welcome, reminding them that they belong here. Odette makes a compelling observation about who usually attends theater and the inherent discriminatory factors of race and socioeconomic exclusion. However, a more captivating detail about Odette's statement lives in her grace-filled delivery of this uncomfortable truth. A clip of Odette exhibits her praying with a few cast members, including Brooks, encircled together with eyes closed. Sharing a similar moral center to her character, Odette proclaims, "What she says is truthful from beginning to end, and I try to have that in my own life too." As such, both female leads demonstrate a spiritual foundation influencing their actions on and off stage. Since the women in this play experience the effects of toxic masculinity, Leon creatively addresses these injustices in his production set amidst the #MeToo and Time's Up movements. In Leon's interpretation of Shakespeare's text, he perceives that the bard wrote men as, quote, silly and stupid. Dealing with their unacceptable behavior in the play, he directs the actresses to find the truth in that, with honest reactions and specific blocking. Moreover, Leon explains, by making Dogberry a woman and those other 3 watchmen men, then everything she says makes sense. It made everything men says silly. Through innovative choices and tactics, Leon reminds the female actors of their freedoms in play, enabling them to depict a truthful experience accurately. In their dire circumstances on stage, the text exacerbates the limitations of the female voice. Nonetheless, this modern production reveals that women possess a fervor for righteousness as they confront the men's offenses. Certain scenes in the show exemplify a transition from women merely truth-revealing to protesting misogynistic behavior. For instance, Leon refers to the wedding when Claudio confronts and forcibly shoves Hero. Leon suggests, if somebody pushes you down at your wedding, we've got to play the truth of that. In that performance, Hero deals with a fall and minor injuries, but shortly after, rises with the help of the other women. Rather than weeping during the accusation, she stands face to face with the men, defending herself with shock and indignation. At one point, Hero charges toward Don Juan, attempting to physically oppose his lies before the women stop her. Although Hero speaks limited dialogue, her distinct blocking advances the feminine objection toward unjust patriarchal norms. Through movement, she illustrates the frustration and physical reaction of a woman's repression that no longer keeps bottled up. According to journalist Susie Evans, this scene, quote, feels very relevant, especially in the Time's Up era. Hero's physical and verbal assault draws notice and reaction as society demonstrates their revolt against misogyny. Likewise, when Beatrice executes her famous speech that envisions her life as a man, her fervor reverberates throughout the stage. Her infectious spirit indwells the audience as they echo her sentiments, echoing her message with roaring applause and cheers. Lastly, when Hero unveils herself before Claudio, she smacks him on the side of his head before grabbing and kissing him. Hero's display of chastising Claudio addresses his severe misstep. In this simple gesture, Hero signals his strength and patience in the role of femininity, demolishing the view of women as feeble victims. Another aspect of women's roles in this stage derives from a Christian faith, especially highlighted in the production's finale. While the ensemble dances the electric slide and the 2 main couples embrace, sirens ring and a somber wave crashes through the joyous celebration. The soldiers kiss their brides before re-entering the war, leaving the stage as they had entered it. In contrast, the women remain behind, watching the men leave, and then burst into a solemn African-American spiritual hymn, praying for protection. With a powerful belt, Beatrice segues into Marvin Gaye's What's Going On? Quote, "Father, Father, we don't have to escalate." She emphatically wails, "War is not the answer. Only love can conquer the hate. But we've got to find a way to find some lovin' here today." Once again, the audience erupts into a supportive, tremendous acclamation. Thus, the women turn to faith, preaching Jesus' message of love, even selflessly loving one's enemy. A riveting, unexpected ending to this performance, led by women, challenges viewers to examine the state of our country and world, demanding an end to hatred in all its evil forms. Critics' reviews of Leon's Much Ado About Nothing deliver compelling insights and further discuss the role of femininity demonstrated in this production. For instance, Raven Snook from Time Out New York writes a mixed review on Leon's portrayal of women. She begins by praising Beatrice's anguished "if I were a man" speech, calling to mind all the capable women, especially Black ones, who've been denied a seat at the table. However, Snook continues by criticizing, quote, "the casting of Latifah Holder as the buffoonish, malaprop-prone Constable Dogberry. Perhaps it's unclear whether we're supposed to be laughing at her or rooting for her, for many of the jokes don't land," end quote. Although Leon intends for Dogberry to remain consistent with the other female roles as a commanding presence, Snook fails to recognize the significance of Holder in the gender-reversing role. The critic acknowledges the obvious feminist tones expressed by Beatrice, but one must look beyond typical expectations, especially when deciphering an unorthodox choice of gender reversal. Another critic, Jesse Green, from the renowned New York Times, analyzes the play's connection to #MeToo, describing it as, quote, "inevitable in a play about varieties of attraction and ownership. Hero finds herself the victim of a smear campaign impugning her virginity. Claudio viciously renounces her, hardly having her troubled to investigate the claim. So does her father," end quote. Green expounds how Shakespeare's text, written in the 16th century, still applies to the modern society run by men wrongfully tarnishing women's dignity. Without further evaluation of Hero's accusation, the men she loves most in her life quickly judge her, discounting her truth and ruining her reputation. After thoroughly examining this production, missing pieces in research remain, giving rise to more questions. Limited rehearsal notes instigate further inquiry regarding Leon's approach to collaboration with his female actors and crew. How much dialogue occurred with the women on stage and behind the scenes? Did these women feel seen and heard throughout the pre-production process? As a male director in charge of his set and steering every artistic choice, Leon's preparation for a show with feminist themes requires an accurate portrayal of women by women. Also, with a Black director and an all-Black cast, one may wonder if some audience members gloss over cultural distinctions that may not translate to people of other races and ethnic backgrounds. The lack of information on theater talkbacks triggers an additional investigation. Do viewers who fail to identify as a woman of color overlook culturally specific idiosyncrasies from this spectrum of femininity? Was Raven Snook's critique of Dogberry's femininity an example of getting lost in cultural translation? Although gaps remain, the necessity for continuous dialogue persists, an imperative precursor to effective action and lasting progress. By examining Leon's production of Much Ado About Nothing with a historiological lens, the research magnifies the role femininity plays as challengers of a modern world in need of political, spiritual, and cultural transformation. The women in this performance establish their valiant efforts on and off stage, inspiring and supporting a generation promulgating #MeToo and Time's Up. In essence, perhaps Leon and Shakespeare share a similar conclusion that resonates in St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as they do their own bodies. Thank you.